Welcome back. I'm back. You're back. All right. We back. Welcome everyone to this episode on the Ultimate Sports TV, guys. Look, training camp is almost here. We're only about 20 days away from it, and the season is almost here, guys. I've had a good look into each NFL roster, and one way I did that was ranking how each offense in the NFL would do in 2021 with the tier list, guys. You can go check out that video on my channel. Make sure you're subscribed, and I'll put it in the little I bar right up there. But guys, in this video, I'll be tier listing how good I think each NFL defense will be in 2020, guys. But before I get into this topic, please make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the Ultimate Sports TV. Because if you are not subscribed, missing out on so much, people. This is the hot spot. Glass and hot from the Ultimate Sports TV spot with NBA and NFL content. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and join the TOS TV squad. Then when you're done with that, please like this video for me, share this video and YouTube channel, then comment down below who you think will be the best defense or your top 5 defenses in the NFL for 2021, guys. But now, let's get into this tier list right here. We're going to start with the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the best defenses last year. Now, look, they will be losing Bud Dupree. They lost Mike Hilton. They lost Steven Nelson, and that secondary is not going to look the best. But hey, this is still a well-coached defense. It's still going to be one of the best front sevens in the league with Stephon Tuitt, Cameron Hayward, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Tyson Alualu on it. They still have some pretty good linebackers with Devin Bush and Vince Williams. So I think it's going to be a good to okay defense. That secondary does concern me, but they still have Minka Fitzpatrick. They still have Joe Hayden, and they still have Cameron Sutton. So I think it's going to be a good to okay defense. I think it's going to be a good defense, not an okay defense, because this is the Pittsburgh Steelers defense we're talking about. It's just not going to be elite like last year because they're losing Bud Dupree and because that secondary got relatively worse in this offseason. Now, the New York Jets. I think this year they'll have a below average defense. There's not really something that pops out to you on their defense. Their secondary definitely does need to improve, and they lost some starters in their secondary this offseason. Those linebackers have a bit of a concern, but they will be getting CJ Mosley back. And that front seven is something that you can look optimistic about, but it's not the best front seven in the world. So I think they'll have a below average defense. Same with the Lions, the Jaguars. I think they'll have a below average defense. The Bengals, they'll have a below average defense. I'm not really liking what their defense is looking like. I think their secondary might improve. Their linebackers aren't very good, and I think they might have a tiny bit problem generating pressure this year. The Patriots defense, that's a defense I think will be middle of the pack. Look, their secondary is still looking good. Their pass rush added Matt Judon to it, and their linebackers are looking good as usual. So I think they'll have I think they'll have a good to okay defense. The Raiders defense, it'll be below average. I mean, they added some pieces. That secondary, it could be better. That front seven got better by adding Yannick Ngakoue. I think it'll be a middle of the pack defense. Now, the Panthers defense, that's a defense I think people should watch out for because they added pieces this offseason. Look, that front seven, it was atrocious like 2 years ago. But they added Hassan Reddick this offseason, and they added Denzel Perryman to their linebacker room, and they have Brian Burns. They have Derrick Brown. They have Daquan Jones inside as a defensive tackle, and they have Shaq Barrett. And then in that secondary, you got J.C. Horn. You got Jeremy Chin. You got A.J. Boye, and you got one of the fastest corners in the league and one of the most talented corners in the league in Dante Jackson. People better watch out for this Carolina Panthers defense. While their offense and their offensive line may need to catch up with it, I think this is an underrated defense going into 2021, given the additions they've made this offseason, guys. So I think they'll be a pretty nice defense in 2021. The Browns defense, I think it'll be an elite defense. Look, they added some pieces on that secondary this offseason. It could go from being the worst part of their defense in 2020 to being the best part of their defense in 2021. They're adding John Johnson, Troy Hill, getting back Grant Delpin and Greedy Williams, and drafted Greg Newsome in the draft to add to that secondary with Denzel Ward and Ronnie Harrison in it, guys. That Browns secondary is going to be one of the best in the NFL, and they added Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in the draft. They have Jacob Phillips, who is going to be a breakout player next year. They have Malcolm Smith, who was a top 10 coverage linebacker last year, graded by PFF. And then we know what that front seven's about in that defensive line. You've got Myles Garrett and you got Jadeveon Clowney, who I think is probably going to be one of the best pass rushing tandems going into next season. And then you got those defensive tackles. While you got rid of Sheldon Richardson, you still have depth there. And their top two linebackers is Andrew Billings, who is one of the best run defending defensive tackles in the league. And then you have Malik Jackson, who is great in pass rush and is definitely a solid starting defensive tackle in the NFL. Is probably just 1 or 2 years removed from being a Pro Bowler. So I think this Browns defense is going to be elite. It's well-rounded. It's got a lot of depth. And that secondary, man, and that defensive line, I think it's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Now let's start loading some teams off here again. That Texan defense, I don't like that Texan defense. I think it'll be bad. The Rams defense last year was a pretty elite defense, although they did lose Troy Hill and John Johnson. They still have some guys in that secondary to go along with Jalen Ramsey. I like their linebackers, and I like the guys they have up front with Aaron Donald. I think it's going to lead the good to okay tier for the defense. I think it's going to digress a little bit just because they lost some key pieces in John Johnson and Troy Hill, which went to the Browns. The Seahawks, their defense, now look, they had one of the best run defending defenses last year. Their pass rush is non-existent. We'll see what goes on with their linebackers. I like their linebacker core, but that secondary does need to get better. I think it'll be middle of the pack. The Colts defense, that's an elite defense automatically. The Packers defense, I think it's a good to okay defense. The Cowboys defense, it's probably going to be below average again. No, I'll put it in the middle of the pack. I think it'll upgrade just a little bit because they got a new defensive coordinator in Dan Quinn. They added Keanu O'Neal. They added Micah Parsons. They added some corners in the draft. And I think it's just going to be a better coach defense this year. The Washington football team's defense, it's going to be one of the best defenses in the league. The Buccaneers defense, we could say the same for them. The Kansas City Chiefs defense, I think it'll be a middle of the pack defense like it was last year. They upgraded that front seven, but that secondary and those linebackers still concern me just a little bit because of their lack of really talent in that spot. Look, they have L'Jarius Sneed as a really breakout corner in his second year. Then you've got Tyrann Mathieu in that secondary, but it is going to need a little more help with those two. The Falcons defense, again, it's probably going to be a below average or bad defense. Yeah, I'll put it in the below average tier. The Cardinals defense, I think that defense will be middle of the pack. Look, you probably will have a good offense this year, so your defense won't have to be out of its mind. But that front seven is going to be good when you have J.J. Watt adding him this offseason, and you have Chandler Jones. You added Zaven Collins, who could fit in well with those two. And then you got Marcus Golden, who was pretty well last year and has been pretty good the last 2 years. And then that secondary, I don't really know about the secondary. I don't think it'll be atrocious, but you still do have Budda Baker there. You've got a couple other pieces like Byron Murphy there. I think it'll be a middle of the pack defense. The San Francisco 49ers defense, now that secondary may concern me a little bit. I think they still have good enough playmakers in it though. I think it'll lead to the good to okay tier. I may change that at the end of the video because I do like the look of the San Francisco 49ers going into next year as their defense concerns. Now, the Baltimore Ravens defense, that front seven may concern me because they lost Matt John, because they lost Yannick Ngakoue, but they still have Brandon Williams. They still have Calais Campbell. You added a Dufe away in the draft. Those linebackers looking pretty nice with Patrick Queen leading the way, and that secondary is going to be good as usual. Now, those safeties, they could get better, but that secondary with those corners, with Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey, it's going to be a pretty nice secondary. They're going to have a good to okay defense next year. The Bills defense is going to be a good to okay defense. Look, their pass rush is going to have to upgrade, but other than that, their coverage areas on their defense last year was pretty good, and I foresee that happening again. The Eagles defense is going to be a below average defense. The Dolphins defense is going to be probably good to okay defense. The Titans defense, that defense is going to be middle of the pack. The Chargers defense, that's going to be middle of the pack. Their defense, I'm not really getting all hip to. They're losing Melvin Ingram, so who's going to be aside Joey Bosa? I'm not really liking the way that linebacker room is looking, knowing they lost some depth. And that secondary, it will be getting Derwin James back, but they lost Casey Hayward. So I think it's going to be a middle of the pack defense. The Saints defense, I think they're going to be a good defense this year. The Bears defense, I think I'll come back to them. The Giants defense, it may be I think it'll be a middle of the pack defense. The Broncos defense, I'll say middle of the pack. The Bears defense, middle of the pack, and the Vikings defense, I think it'll be middle of the pack. Now let's change some things here. The Packers defense, that's something I want to kind of revisit. They've got a pretty nice secondary. I kind of like their, I'll keep them there. The Patriots defense, I think they'll be middle of the pack now that I really think about it. I think their front seven is a bit worse than I kind of will expect. The Steelers defense is good where it is. The Ravens defense is good where it is. I think the Panthers defense will be good where it is. Moving teams up to the elite tier, I think the Rams could go there this season. The Saints defense, I think that's good where it is, although their linebackers may concern me a little bit. Although they did add Peyton Turner, like, who proven do you have next to Cameron Hayward? So that may concern me a little bit, but I do like their secondary, although they did lose Janoris Jenkins, but they still do have Marshawn Lattimore there with a couple other depth pieces. Of the Dolphins defense, it's not a defense full of playmakers like defenses like the Browns or the Buccaneers or the Washington football team or the Steelers, but it's a defense that is well coached. I think Jalen Phillips will end up being defensive player of the year, so I think he'll be pretty nice this year. They've got some pretty nice guys up front. I like their linebackers, and of course I like their secondary. You know what, people? Let's look at how many good defenses we have. We got the Washington football team, the San Francisco 49ers, the Steelers, the Buccaneers, the Browns, the Ravens, that's 6, 7 Colts, 8 Panthers, 9 LA Rams, 10. All right. So I like this. I like the tier list we got here. I think this is how it's all going to shape out this year. Looking at the middle of the pack tier, I would say the Cowboys. I still don't really have faith in their defense. I think it'll be a bit better, but it's not going to be bad like it was last year. But that's my defensive tier list going into 2021 through 2022, guys. This is how I think all defenses will perform and how good they will be next year, people. But other than that, give your top 5 defenses going into 2021 in the comment section below, guys. Other than that, this is Malik Hicks, aka the Rank of the Ultimate Sports TV, signing off. Peace out, and I'll see you in my next one.